Wow. I think it turned out really good.
That's the coolest gift I've ever gotten.
Hello, my name is Josh. I've been leather crafting for about a year now, primarily doing costume pieces, but I recently finished a project for a friend using some garhide as an accent piece for a holster, and it turned out really well. So here's the process of how I made it happen. This project started last summer while my friend and I were out catfish fishing on the river for flatheads. We kept having gar steal our bait, and so we decided to catch some out on the river. And while it was a bit challenging, we eventually got some, and we took the time to tan their hides. Well, I helped clean them, he tanned their hides, and it turned out really well. And he asked me, could you make me a revolver holster with that hide? To start out, I took a holster that he had for his gun currently that he really liked, so I could get similar dimensions. I ended up making a pattern that was somewhat similar, but a little bit more of a traditional style pattern, and just started cutting out some leather. I used 7 to 8 ounce for my main body and 3 to 4 ounce for my liners. A lot of these sort of one-off projects that I do, I enjoy really sketching them out as I go. It's really fun to play with the leather and just see what works out, and if I have to recut a piece, well, so be it. So that's what I did for this one. Here you can see me cutting out the liner there, that thinner material. That'll come in handy later. I do a little bit of prep work, and then I apply some neat's foot oil right away. That allows for the leather to be more pliable, a little bit easier to work with. And wing dividers, can't recommend them enough. If you're just starting out, they are phenomenal to have on hand for quick measurements. Once my base pattern was cut out and I had something to go off of, I started putting my stitching chisels to work and adding in the stitching holes. There's a lot of stitching on this project. Once that was done, I could start working on here is that garhide. Never worked with this before. It's a really interesting material. It's pretty much just bone with a little bit of a backer. So cutting it out with some scissors into a rough shape, cleaning up some of that, a little bit of that hide on the back, applying neat's foot oil, and I did end up clamping this down overnight so that it could stretch out as best as possible. Applying my first coat of dye here. I always use 5-Beans Probe dye. It's always worked really well for me. I do a bit of a mix of a dark brown and then a little bit of a wash of black on it. That provides a really nice weathered look. Cleaning up that hide a little bit more here and getting it ready to put together. Here I used contact cement quite a bit throughout this project. You use it to bond 2 pieces of leather together, or in this case, the leather and the garhide. Once those were held together, I could start punching the holes through the gar itself. This was really difficult. I ended up having to use a drill with a really small bit to get this done. Just very carefully drilling through that essentially bone, those scales, without cracking the hide itself. And this was a very tedious process, but I eventually got it done with the help of my dog here. And it was tedious, but we got it done. Now on to the stitching. There's a ton of stitching in this project. I just use a standard saddle stitch done by hand. I don't own a sewing machine, and the hand stitching is actually incredibly strong, so it is worth the time to put in. And you'll notice on this project, I did some things a little bit out of order from the standard. That was because I really wasn't sure if this was going to work in the end. But that first bend test told me that I was pretty sure it was going to work out, which gave me a lot of hope. So I kept going forward, and here I am applying some contact cement to that backer, that liner. You always want to put a liner on your holsters if you can. It's a little bit more time, more expensive, but it means that you have a smooth surface for your gun to go up against, which means that dust and dirt won't get caught in the soft side of the leather and end up scratching your gun. Once that liner was on, I could start applying my stitching chisels along the edge through the liner and the main body piece. This way I could stitch everything together, and you have to do this in a specific order because obviously some pieces can't be stitched until you have it all together and you're ready to close it up. Finishing your edges is important. Here I use some dye and then burnish with some beeswax. And then back to the stitching. Plenty more stitching here on the upper part and all the way around the entire piece. Once I was well underway on the holster, I did end up deciding to make a custom belt here too. I like a simple, thin belt, about an 8 or a 9 ounce leather with no backer. I find that it fits really well on my body and conforms to it, so that's what I decided to go with here. This is the point where I would usually do things a little bit differently, but I did it out of order this time because I wasn't sure if this project was going to work out. Usually you do your tooling like you see here on the belt, where you have it unfinished leather. You'll maybe oil it up first if it's really dry, but do your tooling first before you put on any dyes, any finishes, anything like that. So I did that correctly on the belt here, but I did try to apply some tooling to the holster itself later on, and that worked out okay, but generally you want to do that before you do any sort of finishing. And here I am applying some of that tooling to the holster itself. Again, this is a little bit too late in the process to do it properly, but this was an experiment and I did the best I could with it. Here I am doing that final stitching. This was incredibly difficult to do. I had to tack it, water form it, leave it overnight, and then I was able to squeeze it back together and slowly stitch up that last edge. And here's that final fitting. You can see I've got a slight clasp there on the end that's stitched up to hold that hammer down so the gun doesn't slide out. This last water form is to hold it together, try to conform the holster to the gun as best you can. Didn't really work too well on this one because the garhide is so tough, but we did the best we could. And here's the final product. I think it turned out really well. It's a really nice classic looking revolver holster, but then you have the gar details on the belt and obviously the garhide itself on the front of the holster. This project was definitely a challenge for me, but I really enjoyed it. It was difficult working with that exotic material and fun to work with something you actually caught yourself. So let me know your thoughts, and here's my friend's reaction.
Wow.
I think it turned out really good.
That's the coolest gift I've ever gotten. This is so much beefier than the other one. The other cheap one, the fake one had.
Yeah.
Wow, that sits so much nicer than the other one. I thought it'd be like heavier, but no. It's insane.
I think it's pretty cool.
Wow.